Hello, everybody. Today we'll have a discussion around something that has become a buzzword, and everybody seems to be talking about it. You on the TV, and you see people talking about it. You look at social media; it's like dominating. It's all about COVID-19 and what it has done, and what are the repercussions of it, and how we are suffering, and how we will suffer more. Um, the issue of unemployment, people being laid off, the economic woes of different countries, the problem of how to manage this or try to manage this. So let me kind of build a little bit of a track here. Let's go one thing at a time and try to understand this. Um, Number one, yes, this is something big. Of course it is. Um, Number two, is this something we should have seen coming? Of course, no. Pandemics are something that take you by surprise. But I believe what we should have seen coming is the economic fallbacks of it. Why? Because the lessons that we were given every time there was an economic crisis, we never really learned them, right? We never really picked up from those lessons. Today, everybody's talking about there is a new normal, and that is what we need to accept. We need a new business strategy. We believe consumer behavior will change forever. Few companies will disappear. We will never see them. There's always opportunity in crisis, and the new entrepreneur is going to come up, and this new entrepreneur is going to emerge as the new success story, as long as this new entrepreneur has the right approach, the right attitude, and the right personality. So let me correct some things out here. Yes, there is a new normal, and there was a new normal every time we had a crisis. Every time the world went into an economic crisis of sorts, we had a new normal. So do you think that when we had the credit crisis of 1772, where over-optimism created so much credit expansion that the world collapsed, don't you think we had a new normal then? We did. When we had the Great Depression of 1929, that took 10 years to finish, do you think we didn't have a new normal? And that was caused by poor policy making by the US government. We had a new normal. When the OPEC oil prices crashed in 1973, we had a new normal. When we had the dot-com bubble burst, when people started leaving San Diego like flies and there was nothing there anymore, people lost a lot of money, we had a new normal. When the Asian crisis of 1997 took place, when Thailand began over-speculating capital cash flows, we had a new normal. When the financial crisis of 2007 and 8 hit, when people were leaving their cars behind by the hundreds and thousands outside Dubai airport and then heading back home, we had a new normal. And in each one of these crises, jobs were lost. In each one of these crises, businesses were shut. And in each one of these crises, we had major economic and social change, major ones. You think that when Lehman Brothers went down, that whole episode was cheap? It wasn't. Lehman Brothers had 261 billion in assets, and they were shut down. Thousands and thousands of people lost their jobs. At that particular crisis, General Motors filed for bankruptcy. General Motors at that time had assets of more than $29 billion. And yet, because of a government stimulus at that time, General Motors was saved. Chrysler was in trouble, and Chrysler actually had 29 billion in assets, and General Motors had more than 91 billion in assets. The thing is, we are trying to overdo this whole concept of what COVID-19 is doing to us and what it is potentially going to do to us, and creating a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety, which is not helping. It is really, really not helping. You're making people very anxious. You're making people very negative. You're making people believe that this is the end of the world, and it's not. We have always come through crisis. The only problem that I think is real, and we need to address it, is that we never took the learning from each of these crises, and we never actually implemented solutions that were real. So if you look at the dot-com bubble burst that happened in the 90s, where a lot of the technology startup companies went bust, those companies, if you look back in history, when they would launch, They had so much money from VC funds and investors that their launch parties was as big as a Hollywood movie launch. There was so much money being wasted. Guess what? We are still seeing that today. We are seeing regular startups with very young millennials being launched with a big pomp and fare and a lot of money being spent on marketing and social media. We haven't learned. Those failures in the 90s continue today. It's got nothing to do with COVID-19. The businesses that failed in the 2007 and 8 crisis failed because their cash flows were not really positive. They were always struggling. They were always on a hand-to-mouth situation. We are still doing that. That's why, can you imagine that a three-month lockdown is supposed to make you dry and run bankrupt? That means you always had a cash flow issue. You always had a cash flow problem. So my question is, where were the regulators? These are the same regulators who saw the 90s crisis, who saw the 2007 and 8 crisis. Where are these regulators? Why haven't they regulated businesses properly? Why were they allowing such businesses to thrive? And guess what? These are the same businesses that take huge, massive loans from banks. And then they create another problem for us. If you want facts, I'll give you facts. Last year in the US, there were banks that have made profits to the tune of $233 billion. And as we all know, banks make money only by the interest that they earn out of lending, right? So if they have made profits of $233 billion last year, 2019, you can imagine the amount of loans that they have given, which should be in trillions. Now, where is all of that money? And why weren't the regulators trying to monitor what is happening with this cash? And potentially, if there is a problem, as we see today with COVID-19, what could happen to economy? The GCC, all of the GCC, had declared close to 36 to 40 billion dollars worth of net profits, banking sector. Today, those banks are claiming that they're in trouble. Okay, I know of a particular company, I don't want to mention the name of the company. Last year, they declared profits of around $54 million. And today, and as in not the month of June, 2 months ago, they started laying off people because they're saying, oh, we can't keep so many employees, so we have to cut down. I'm a little surprised. You declare 54 million last year in net profit, and 4 months later, 5 months later, you don't have money to pay for 500 employees? Are you kidding me? I think, number one, everybody is overplaying this. And number two, the ones who are smart, which is the case here, all the businesses, are trying to milk the situation. And they're milking the situation very well. They're putting governments in a very tight spot. And that's not fair. These are the governments who have supported banks that have given you massive loans by which you have expanded and scaled your businesses. You're supposed to give back. This is your time to give back. This is not your time to look for more money, free money, so that you can be bailed out. You need to understand, all of us need to understand that these are the kind of things we have to change. These are the areas where we need to focus. These are the issues that we need to bring up. We shouldn't create more panic. We should bring in more responsibility, more accountability, more control, more measures, more policies that allow such situations not to happen again. So yes, COVID-19 is bad, but I think it wouldn't have been this bad if we had learned all our lessons, if we had learned a lesson from 2007 and 8, if we had learned our lessons with the 90s bubble burst of the dot-com industry. We haven't learned. Today, people are still talking about, oh, we can create this massive entrepreneurship sector, which will be better than the one previous or the one ever. Don't promote some more speculation that has already cost us trillions of dollars. We don't need new entrepreneurs that don't understand what cash flow is, that don't understand what revenue models are, that don't follow basic business and economic fundamentals, which say that you need to pay rents, you need to pay salaries. The whole idea of entrepreneurship sector is going to be the next job sector. Oh yes, it is. But they still need to behave as professional businesses. They cannot repeat the mistakes of the 90s and the 2000s. And this is where I invite all of the decision makers, especially in governments, policy-making positions. You need to have more control. You need to have more regulation. You need to have stronger policies. We cannot afford for companies and businesses to go bust, even though they have borrowed millions billions of dollars over the last 10 years, over the last 5 years, over the last 15 years, and now today declare bankruptcy. How could you let this happen? How could you let these businesses survive? How could companies go all of a sudden bankrupt when they're declaring 50 and 100 million net profits just 6 months before? Someone has to question this. This is where I'm a little upset. And of course, like I said, to promote this amazing new entrepreneur that will come in. No, first get them educated with business fundamentals. Please don't encourage more losses. Let's not forget the fact that up until 2019, all reports said that 90%, up to 90% failure is in the entrepreneurship world. That is a lot of money. That's billions of dollars gone down the drain. You don't need another problem. You need more solutions. I'd like people to get together trying to set new policy to regulate and not create another adventure story that is bound to create another major problem. Recessions happen because we don't prepare ourselves enough. And at the end of this, common man suffers. The middle class suffers. The working class suffers. The migrant laborers suffer. The daily wage laborers suffer. Today we are having a situation where people are calling, people like you and me, for money for food. They don't have money to eat. This is bad. We are in 2020. How could we have reached a situation where people living in cities, not in rural villages, in cities, are asking for money to eat? This has happened because we haven't set the right policies. This has happened because we haven't learned from our past. I think the most important thing we need to do now is to understand what is the learning we can get and what is the learning that we missed on, so that we can put that together and say, hey, listen, 2030, we will never reach this situation. There have to be more provisions. There have to be more strict measures. We cannot allow large companies, large corporations to just milk the situation and eat on government treasuries. It's not done. It's not fair. Taxpayers' money is going. And it is going just to save businesses that are just basically trying to milk the whole situation. So today's video is all about trying to raise attention, focus, and awareness on real issues. And that is about holding people accountable and responsible who could have done much more better than put us in this situation that we are in. So I really want all of you to not deviate from the major issues and try to focus on this, because this is going to change. Because if we don't change now, trust me, the next time around we won't be able to get up from a bigger problem than this. So I wish all of you the best of luck, and everybody who's feeling anxious and worried about their jobs, about their businesses, I'm telling you, things will change. Just let these few months go by and everything will be fine. And I wish you all good life and a healthy life, and be safe.